Packers Rams is the next game that I want to talk about here. Two very intriguing teams. Already quite the highs and lows for both of this group, or both of the teams that are matching up here. They both gone through injuries. What do we think about this one? What is now the matchup that matters heading into Sunday, Carmen?
Well, if you look outside of Matthew Stafford, I think this Rams, the strength of this Rams team, it actually lies on the defensive front. And we saw that against Chicago. They were able to do, I mean, they're one of the best as far as the stunts they run up front, the creativity they have with their line, the way that they move guys in and out. They're young this year, but Kobe Turner tied for third among interior DL in pressures.
Mm-hmm.
And Braden Fisk, I really liked him coming out, and he's been really quietly one of their better players along that defensive line.
Yep.
Jared Verse has 17 pressures, but I really think that that interior defensive line in particular for the Rams is really kind of outperforming expectations. I think everybody was just hesitant to give them any expectations given the fact that they lost Aaron Donald, but not that they've made up for it, because nobody can really make up for losing Aaron Donald. But they've certainly fared better than I think a lot of people thought. So going against this Green Bay offensive line, which has, figured out the right combination, it took them, a week or two in the beginning of the season to kind of make sure that to solidify the front five. On the outside, I think like if you're looking for kind of a weakness on this Green Bay offensive line, it's still Rasheed Walker, who is committing some penalties. He's had some back and forths. Ups and downs rather even as far as pass blocking and getting beat and allowing pressures and stuff like that. But Packers O-line does have a 72.8 PFF grade as a unit, so it's 11th overall. And I do expect a pretty big game from Jordan Love, given the fact that he did not play as well as he wanted to against the Minnesota Vikings and Brian Flores. Jordan Love was just the latest victim of that defense and was, fighting to the bitter end. So I just feel like he was shaking off some rust after being out. And I really think that they're going to kind of unleash Jordan Love a little bit more, where they were kind of being a little bit hesitant and trying to still lean on that run game against the Vikings. They get down, that just doesn't work. It's kind of a mess. I just expect a bounce back game from Jordan Love. And by proxy, then it's going to matter how much this offensive line is able to contend with the Rams defensive line.
Yeah, I'm going to flip to the other side of things. I'm going to talk about the Packers pass rush versus the Rams offensive line. Rams offensive line, they've been through a ton of different injuries. 34.8 pass blocking grade as a team through 4 weeks. That's dead last in the NFL. 53 pressures allowed. That's 26th in the NFL. So there's just no doubt about it. The Rams offensive line, it's depleted. They've already got multiple backups in there. They're just not playing well, but it's hard to have the expectations that they play really well given all the losses that they have had amongst that group. So we already sort of know the state that the Rams offensive line is in. The Packers defense, quietly one of the worst pass rushing units in the NFL, which I don't think anybody was really predicting. You go from a Joe Barry defense to a Jeff Hafley defense, and it looks a little bit different with 4 defensive linemen up front instead of like a lot more, or I should say a lot less structured. But right now, 56.1 pass rush grade as a team. That's 28th in the NFL. 27.3 pass rush win percentage as a team. That's 31st in the NFL. The only team that is worse is the Carolina Panthers. And we talked about how, they're really struggling. It's sort of a get right opportunity for Chicago's offensive line. It might kind of be that way for the Rams offensive line, but I really feel like it's almost the other side of things. Like the Packers have to play better here. Yeah. Rams offensive line is beat up. You've got to have your best day of the season against the Rams offensive line, or I'm going to start to get real worried. Like even Rashawn Gary, I have the numbers up right now. Gary, 3.9% pass rush win percentage. That's nuts. Yeah. That's terrible for Rashawn Gary's standards of things. This is somebody who's had pass rush win percentages near 20, I think even above 20 at different points throughout his NFL career. And so, yeah, last year was, I just loaded up 16.4%, 18.6%, 21% pass rush win percentage in each of the last 3 seasons. And now he's at a 3.9. And I think it's at Ollie Conley and I broke this down a little bit further when we were doing the In the Trenches episode earlier this week. And Ollie correctly pointed out that, last year, the defensive line was sort of set up for Rashawn Gary just to win in similar ways that the Detroit Lions defensive line right now is set up to allow Hayden Hutchinson to win. And I'm not saying anything to take away from Hutchinson when I say that. But what I'm saying is the structure of the defense and the defensive line gets Aiden in one-on-one opportunities where he truly has the offensive tackle on an island. They align him far away from the line of scrimmage in like a 7 alignment, even with no tight end on the field. It's like he is a 7 technique defensive end. And then they'll have the closest interior defensive lineman, either the inside shoulder of the guard or the outside shoulder of the center, to where the guard has to pay attention and almost double team that player immediately as the rest of the line slide protects the other direction. And it leaves the offensive tackle truly one-on-one on an island with Hutchinson. And he's just been beating the crap out of them. Now, that's sort of what the Packers were doing in years past with Gary. That's not really what they're doing right now. They're more, it's a 4-down front, so they're keeping these guys a little bit tighter towards each other between the tackles, and they're asking him to win. It's the same thing with Lucas Van Ness on the other side. They're asking these guys to sort of win in a phone booth quickly as 5 technique defensive ends, and they're just not. So again, I don't know if they're going to just try and run the same thing that they've been running and think that it's going to be better against a poor Los Angeles Rams offensive line, or if we might see them switch it up a little bit, maybe get more towards what we saw previous years, especially setting up Gary to win. But right now, a lot of people talk about the Packers offense. You talk about the receivers and Jordan Love and the offensive line and everything, and like it's worth talking about. But the thing that would hold this team back is the lack of pass rush that they have right now. So it's got to get a lot better. But what's the plus factor for you here in this game?
Yeah, one more note on that too. I just think that this is where you see schematic shifts matter, because I talked a lot about how Green Bay is running a 4-3 defense for the first time since 2008. This is not something that they've been equipped to run for a very long time, which is it's reflected in the roster construction. Because when you look at Lucas Van Ness and you look at Rashawn Gary, these guys aren't necessarily 4-3 defensive ends as far as size, and they're more suited to be those outside backer spots. And because that's what Green Bay had prior to Jeff Hafley's arrival. And that's where you see, for as much as defenses kind of shift and change, and, even 3-4 defenses present 4-down fronts when you're in your nickel package very often. So it's very fluid, but when you talk about schematic shifts and changes, this is where it starts to matter, is does your personnel match what you're trying to do when you're in your base front? And that isn't necessarily the case in Green Bay, but the caveat to all of this is that Jeff Hafley's defenses really run through the safeties. That's why they went out and they got Xavier McKinney, which was very uncharacteristic of Green Bay to spend so much money on a high-priced free agent in the secondary. But it has paid off. Xavier McKinney has had an interception every single game this season. Can he continue that? Because that's also coming on in very crucial situations where the Packers need to stop. The Packers cannot afford, more points on the board. They're not great in the red zone, but they are getting turnovers. And that's kind of where the stress of this defense lies, is, all right, yeah, we don't have that effective pass rush, but it doesn't seem to be affecting the back levels at all, which are still taking the ball away. And that's kind of where Jeff Hafley has focused all of his efforts. And I think that you're going to see a domino effect of, eventually the defensive front getting better. They're going to have more of a chance to get some of those sacks when you have guys, in the backfield with some of these coverage sacks that Green Bay has been able to get. That's where this Green Bay defense makes its bread and butter. So my plus factor is Xavier McKinney. Can he continue this tear that he's been on of just picking the ball off, especially picking the ball off in situations that Green Bay needs it?
4 interceptions in 4 games for a new team is stupid production. My plus factor for this one is it's just Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, to be honest with you. The Rams are 11th in EPA per play going into this week, for a unit that is down Puka Nacua, down Cooper Kupp, down multiple starting offensive linemen. Like, what more can you take away from this team? Essentially, it's the meme of like Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay are like, stop giving me your toughest battles, and the other meme is like, how are you still alive? Essentially, how are you still anywhere near the top 10 of EPA per play? That's the meme for the Los Angeles Rams, and yet they are. And so I'm never going to count this duo out. I
No,
can't.
you can't.
They're too good. They're too experienced. They understand the game of football way too well. They're making up for some extreme losses on that offensive side of the ball. So I will never count them out. And I think that they will always be the plus factor to me.